Here goes.
Edition of WeatherScope. Comprehensive severe weather coverage from the Weather Channel Forecast Center.
We're giving you full coverage throughout the afternoon hours into the evening. My name is Janine Diadamo, and I'm joined by our senior meteorologist, Matt Crowther. Thanks for joining us, Matt.
Glad to be here.
All right, we're going to take a look, first of all, at the statistics. We got a brand new advisory as of 9 o'clock, and you'll see, and we're happy to see, that Hurricane Bertha has weakened from 105 miles an hour to 85 miles an hour. Still a Category 1 hurricane, still very strong, with winds very gusty. And
this evening.
That's right, we have right around New Bern, around Interstate 70. We had reports of a weak tornado. Well, now we have our very own Jeff Morrow standing by live, and he's in Buxton, North Carolina, near Cape Hatteras. And Jeff, it's been an interesting evening for you. Have you ever experienced anything like this before?
The only time that I was in winds quite this strong would have to be with Hurricane Aaron last year along the Florida coast. And actually, Matt was there as well. He was there the same night I was in Vero Beach as Aaron came ashore. And there were winds upwards of 80, 90, maybe close to 100 miles an hour at that point. I don't think we had 100-mile-an-hour gusts here, but we had some gusts between 80 and 90 miles an hour, rain blowing sideways, some pretty nasty conditions, I'd say, for a good better part of 45 minutes to an hour. The squalls just kept blowing through here, and it was pretty hairy, to say the least.
Jeff, this is Matt. Have you seen a shift in the wind yet? Because once that wind shifts around perhaps to a more southerly or southwesterly direction, you could see the water start to come in from the other direction.
Actually, Matt, the wind has started to shift around here. It is definitely coming up almost from the due south right now, which leads me to believe that the actual center of the hurricane must be almost due west of where we are on the Cape. And we expect it to start even switching around more to the southwest. As it does so, you're right that water in Pamlico Sound is going to start sloshing back this way. It looks like it emptied out anywhere between 2 to 5 feet worth of water on this side of the sound, and that has to come back eventually. And when it does later on tonight, that could cause a little bit of reverse, I guess you'd have to call it, sloshback flooding here on this side of the sound.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us, Jeff. We'll be talking with him on the half hours. And it looked like the winds had died down somewhat. It didn't look like it was raining as hard. Earlier, he had gusts over 75 miles an hour, he thought.
That's right. Well, that's partly the effect of the storm weakening, and it did go down 15 miles an hour from the one advisory to the next. And if that trend continues, we could have just a tropical storm by later on tonight, and that's what we are forecasting.
Okay, we're looking at the radar right now, and you can see the center. Wow, you can see the center. There it is, very far inland, but heavy rains to the north and east.
That's right. It continues to drift off to the north, and we do see still a pretty good well-defined center, but if you notice, there's not a lot of convection on the southwestern side of it, and that is one indication that it is weakening, but those heavy rains are going to be a problem all through this region. As we mentioned before, a lot of flooding could be possible all the way up the coast as it moves toward New York City, New Jersey, and New England by late tomorrow.
Right, and we were talking about the pressure gradient between that high-pressure ridge and, of course, the hurricane. That's going to bring in those easterly winds, the southeasterly winds, and pile up the water as far as...
But as the storm weakens, the coastal flooding will get less and less, and our attention will turn more...
That radar if we can, and you'll see it. The showers already in southern New York at this time.
That's right, and the rain shield extends well to the north, way up to the New York area, and this will continue, so it looks like even places like Boston may be getting some rain by later on today, and we've already gotten some reports of flooding in North Carolina. We have a flood warning in effect, and we expect to unfortunately see quite a few more flood warnings before all is said and done.
That's right, we're certainly going to add to some of the storm totals. We've had anywhere from 2 to 4 inches already in eastern North Carolina. We've had reports of flooding. Many businesses and several places are flooded. This I want to pass along to you, though, Matt. I don't know if you heard Washington Park, which is upriver of the Pamlico River. Some of Rich Johnson's in-laws live in this area, and they've had reports of the Washington Park Bridge completely washed out and 5 feet above normal waters. Those are all tidal waters as they come in from Pamlico Sound.
What probably happened is the wind probably paralleled exactly on the direction that the sound is and the river is oriented, and that pushed the water up even well inland ahead of the storm.
That's right. Well, certainly a very interesting night. We'll keep you posted of all the latest here. And coming up, a complete forecast for the nation. That's just ahead on this edition of WeatherScope. Stay with us.
Experience Florida.
We look at the current map, and we've already briefed you on Bertha, but we can give you more information on what else is happening across the lower 48, because there is a lot to talk about. So as we continue our WeatherScope, let's focus in on this low pressure system across the western lakes. Let's also talk a little bit about some of the active weather. Hey, and I mean active out here into eastern Colorado with even a few possible tornadoes as we head into, well, east of the Denver area. First stop is going to show you where we think the severe weather threat might be across the western Great Lakes. And again, as we have our landfalling hurricane, anytime we have a landfalling tropical system, all the dynamics with that may stir things up just enough to produce some severe weather. Also looking at the potential for severe weather out into the high plains of Colorado and on into the central plains heading into Kansas. There's a look at the watch areas that remain in effect, and our first radar stop takes us into Colorado, where we actually have a tornado warning in effect. We do have flood watches in effect from North Carolina into eastern New York and parts of southern New England. Again, locally.
This is where the storm is right now. I do want to make a little bit of a correction here. See if this is right. As I step into the camera. A little bit tall there. We're going to adjust the camera a little bit. Got to do this occasionally here, so I look about the right size. How's that? That's pretty good. I'm about the right size right now. Africa coming across the Atlantic, cut across the Caribbean, I think it was last Sunday, into the Bahamas, and now as it's moving up the East Coast in the North Carolina area, a very dramatic picture. No other system, no other tropical storm has developed this far east in the Atlantic this time of year. Very interesting. Also watch as it comes across, you'll see troughs of low pressure come across the United States and offshore, and we thought each one of these might tug on it a little bit and move it out to sea, but it was stronger than those troughs of low pressure, so it did come arm right about here. This is the first landfalling hurricane of the Atlantic hurricane season. It came on shore, the center of the eye, right around Wrightsville Beach around 5 o'clock this evening. And the good news, of course, once it gets over land, it continues to weaken. It needs the warm waters to help fuel it or help keep the energy going, and once it gets over the cooler land, it loses its energy source and it starts to decrease in intensity, and again, that's very good news. You see some of the heavy air convection, the bright orange and red colors that were moving over parts of Delaware and Maryland and extreme southern New Jersey have dissipated now, and again, that's a good sign. Still heavy rains are expected, but maybe not that heavy. We're talking 5 to 6 to 7 inch rains in some areas, and we'll detail that for you coming up right now. Here's a radar picture, a Doppler radar picture, still showing a well-defined center of circulation, or the eye of still Hurricane Bertha. You can see it here, spinning and spinning, moving off to the northeast right now very slowly. Very heavy convective bands moving through Cape Hatteras. Here's one, then there was a break. Here comes another heavy band of thunder showers and heavy rains and wind. You see right around the eye wall, there were some heavy orange and red colors, or orange and red colors showing some heavy rains. Those have now dissipated. So all this is good news as the system itself is tending to weaken right now. However, we still have symmetrical around the center right now, still being felt. In some areas, still reporting winds about an hour ago, I believe, around Cape Lookout, around 80 miles an hour in wind gusts. Storm surge expected, the heaviest here, the strongest surge around 4 to 6 feet. As the system moves further north, storm surge is about 2 to 4 feet above normal. As we look at the rainfall amounts, again, 5 to 7 inches will be quite common the next 24 hours as far north as Long Island. Believe it or not, by Sunday mid-morning, things should be clearing out very rapidly. It could be a beautiful last half of the weekend in Philly, in Newark, in New York, and Boston. But the first half of the weekend is going to be pretty rainy and pretty messy. Tornado watch in effect for the next several hours. Let's look at a radar and see what's going on now. Now, this is a non-Doppler radar, conventional radar picture of what's going on. No severe weather reported during the last several hours. About 4 or 5 o'clock local time, several tornadoes reported around the New Bern area. And hurricanes, once they make landfall, do tend to cause occasional severe thunderstorms, including tornadoes. We'll have to keep a close eye on that for you. We'll take a quick look at the Northeast forecast for tomorrow morning.